Hello, hello, and welcome to Hygiene Elevated Conversations and Innovations. Today, we are joined by the one and only Christine Diehl, aka the DSO Hygienist. And so today we're going to be talking about all things DSO. And Christine, you have a podcast that is
Yeah.
all about hygienists and the DSO world. And we're definitely going to dig into that a little bit further into the podcast.
hmm
But to start out, we just kind of want to know, what is your story? Tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey in the field of dental hygiene.
Well, thank you so much for having me tonight, ladies. I'm so excited to be with you. Um, my journey in dental hygiene, I've been a hygienist for about over 30 years.
Wow.
And I was in private practice for most of my career. About 7, 8 years ago, my private practice was bought by a DSO. And we were all terrified about a DSO coming in and our doctor didn't really tell us that he was selling the practice to a DSO.
Mm.
And unfortunately, I kind of figured it out.
Oh, gosh.
And then I let the cat out of the bag and, then everything kind of went a little crazy for a few days. But we were very fortunate. The DSO that I work with or at or however you want to describe it has been nothing but really good. Like their transition was good. They really didn't change very much from our private practice. We are still a fee for service practice. So for us, for me personally, it was a really good experience. So unfortunately, though, I had always been told my entire career that, DSOs were bad. It's prophy mill. It's just about money, all those things that you kind of associate or in the past have associated with the DSO.
Yeah, all of those. I will say some DSOs definitely have a well-earned reputation for being a lot of those negative things
hmm
that you talked about. But I have a similar story with you. I have been a hygienist for 16 years now, private practice up until I moved here to Utah, and I was, just applying like crazy, and I wound up working for a DSO, a very small local DSO. And I was nervous. I was very nervous because, like you, I was like, oh, they're going to be on me about money. It's just going to be poor standard of care. And that was not at all what my experience has been. And I know Joffrey also works for a DSO, and so we
Oh,
compare back and forth. And so there's definitely things about her DSO that I'm like, gosh, I wish my DSO was doing that. But we can talk about that as we go on and on. But
but that's a great example of there's a
yeah,
lot of different types of DSOs out there. And so just because you've had a bad experience with one doesn't mean you aren't going to find one that fits you.
it's very true. Very
And
true.
that's kind of my whole message to people is I just think that we have to change this conversation so that people don't have like, oh my God, total fear. And because that's all I read on Facebook. Oh,
Mhm.
a DSO just bought my private practice. Do I quit now? Or, like
Yeah,
I just don't want that stigma around again, since I've had such a good experience.
yeah. I think again, personally, I feel like I've had more support as a hygienist in a DSO than I ever did in private practice.
Hmm.
I do think, I will say this is a negative side to a DSO. I worked at a very exceptional practice before I moved up to Utah, and I was very well taken care of. Like, my office bought me loops. We went to a very expensive conference every year, and it was basically like a family vacation, like just kind of ridiculous,
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
great things.
Sure.
And those are not things that you're typically going to get as a DSO, or at a DSO. But as a provider, I feel like I'm actually a provider at my DSO, and I am encouraged and I don't want to say held to that standard, but held to a standard, but I feel that I'm equipped
hmm
for those things. So I would agree with you.
Yeah,
I
and
think some of
I
that
love the
conversation.
camaraderie. Like
Mhm.
within my DSO, we get together and we do CEs, and we like have I think we have 5 regions. And so and we can go to any region and do a CD or CE, excuse me. Um and I just love that, meeting other hygienists, and it's almost like I have a little association, right? That I have at my disposal to reach out to people whenever. And we have like a private Facebook page that we can talk to each other and share stuff. So I really feel like more of a family atmosphere.
I agree. I like the camaraderie.
Hmm.
I love like we have specialists that come to our office, and I like that I have the ability, like if I'm off and I want to cover an extra day, or if I want a little extra money, we use Slack to communicate, and if somebody needs coverage, you can cover and you get to know that office, and it's
Yeah.
like, "Oh yeah, I know you. I see you here, there, whatever." So I do like that camaraderie aspect as well. And
Yeah.
that's
And
definitely not
then when you're
something.
like temping at another office, you already know their systems.
Exactly.
So it's not like you're walking in cold.
Yeah.
So, and
Yeah.
yeah, we have a system like that as well. And that's really nice. They actually give an incentive in pay if you go to another office.
Really? Okay. See, I feel like that is something that we're lacking at our DSO, is that incentive to cover at another office.
Right, because they have to pay a temp agency. So they figure, by paying a little extra, that we can do it in-house and then they don't have to go
Yes.
out.
And then you have a hygienist that already knows the system, like you said.
Yeah.
We can solve all the problems today, Christine.
For sure.
We can. I want to just touch on, Amanda, I really agree with you how you were saying, there you can find a great DSO, you could find a crappy DSO.
Mhm.
And I just wanted to say my friend Carl in recruiting. So if you're listening, hi Carl. But he always says if you've met one DSO, you've met one DSO.
Right.
Yeah.
And so they all have their own special little things about them. And I really enjoy working for a DSO more than I ever thought I would.
Mhm.
But I want to know, Christine, what inspired you to start your own podcast focusing on DSOs, dental support organizations, and hygienists working for them?
Well, part of it was to flip the script and get a more positive, um, you know, conversation going about DSOs. Uh, Fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know how people want to look at it, but DSOs are going to be 40% of dentistry by 2026, they predict.
Gosh, that's
So a lot of us are going to find ourselves working for DSOs, and probably the way I did, by getting bought. Yeah, my dentist retired, and unfortunately for a lot of dentists today, it's hard for them to find an associate that can buy their practice, because a lot of these guys come out with so much debt. So I just wanted to get positive like positive stuff out there about DSOs. And I also wanted to feature different hygienists within the DSO landscape and different roles that they could have, um, and just get some education out there as well. I had Susan Cotton did an episode
oh,
for me on oral cancer for April, and she's fantastic. Everybody loves Susan.
yeah.
So
Love
Mhm.
Susie.
yeah, she's great. So it's a lot of fun, and I'm really enjoying it.
I I love that idea, and I think, especially for people who don't understand a DSO, myself being one of those people 3 years ago, I didn't know that there were so many positions that a hygienist could have within a DSO.
Yeah.
I didn't realize there could be managers or scheduling managers or regional managers. I never knew that was a thing. So I think you have a great resource. So, I mean, keep going, keep it up, because that's so encouraging and motivating for people that they didn't know that was a thing.
And that was one of the other things I'm talking to a hygienist who is in a DSO, and she's in a higher, regional position. And so I'm really excited to talk to her. I talked to one who is also in a regional position, but she also works clinically a couple days a week. So there's a lot of different models. And I just think that's going to be very interesting to find out a little bit more about what everybody does. And I've got a great lineup of guests coming up. I'm actually my next podcast is my doctor that retired.
Oh, cool.
And we talk about transitioning from a private practice to a DSO and
That's
how
cool.
how he transitioned. And I did give him a little grief about not trusting us enough to tell us.
Yeah, that is well-earned grief.
Right?
Because the office that I worked at was in a similar situation. I was already working for our DSO at another location, and they were buying a practice in the town that I live in, and the doctor did not tell them until our regional manager walked in basically to start training, and they were like, what? And they were so afraid, like they thought they were losing their jobs, like they just didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was an interesting one.
It is. And I think there are a lot of doctors that, are really scared.
Yeah.
To, especially if they've been bashing DSOs for years.
Very true.
And then all of a sudden you're going to be selling to one and now you're like, oh no, these are good now.
Yeah.
So I think it's just being honest. And I had worked for him practically my entire career. So it was just one of those relationships where you were like, you probably could have told us that.
Yeah.
Christine, I'm curious. Do you play any other roles at your current DSO other than a clinician?
I am the hygiene advocate for my DSO. Unfortunately, I haven't done a lot with that recently. Both of my parents have been ill. So I've kind of stepped away from that for a little while. So I'm hoping to get back into it though. And my job kind of would be, I feel more like, I don't know what you want to call it, den mother. Like you can call me if you have questions or, like the elder of my group.
Mentor.
Yes, mentor. Mentor sounds way better.
That's more official.
Right?
So how large is your DSO? Like how many locations?
We have 35 locations,
Okay.
but we also partner with Smile Brands and Midwest Dental.
Okay.
So we're kind of a branch off of that.
So within us, or I'm going to backtrack just a little bit in our conversation. Sure. So you talked earlier, DSO, Dental Support Organization. What are some roles that hygienists can have within these organizations? We kind of talked manager, this, that, and the other. Mm-hmm. But I mean, can you kind of do a rough list off basically of what some of those positions are? And you did mention like there's hybrids, there's different models, clinical, non-clinical, so on and so forth.
Yeah, you could be all the way up to like VP of operations. I know a hygienist that's a VP of operations. You could be the director of hygiene. So you would be over all the hygienists in your organization. Usually there's a director and then they break them up into regions. So you would have different regions of clinicians that would take care of a certain, like one of my girlfriends, she has Illinois, Indiana, and New York, which are kind of weird. She virtually does most of her New York clients, obviously, are her New York hygienists. And let's see, there's also mentorships you could do. I know different organizations use a mentor type of thing with new hires that are new hygienists. So they team them up with a more seasoned hygienist so that they can help them throughout the process getting acclimated to the office. Mm-hmm. So there are a lot of different, I actually even know one hygienist that owned a DSO. So there can be a lot of different aspects and a lot of different areas to get into.
I think that's encouraging, for this younger generation and just just different regions within the country, there are so many opportunities. It's not just you're going to be cleaning teeth the rest of your life. And that's exciting.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
Amanda, I want to add to that list. Dental hygienist, we can be recruiters for DSOs. We could be, chief operating officers. We could be like director of culture. Like there's so many things that dental hygienists can do within a DSO. It is so cool. I remember being in hygiene school and we were talking about things hygienists could do outside the operatory, and your options in the classroom seem so limited. You could do research,
right,
or you could do teaching, and like that, those were it. Like that's really,
or go to work for like Sonicare or Oral B.
Right,
That's like
a salesperson, right.
This DSO space has created so many more opportunities for us. I think it's just phenomenal.
Yeah.
Oh, no, and Christine, one of the co-founders of the DSO I work for is actually a hygienist herself.
Yeah, and that's awesome. Yeah, one of my first podcasts was with Janet Hagerman, and she talks about a chief hygiene officer, like a fractional that would and I'm not sure exactly how that works, but I thought that was very interesting title for someone.
Yeah, I love that. So we talked about misconceptions of DSOs. How do you kind of plan on kind of addressing some of those concerns through your podcast?
Well, I'm hoping to actually talk to all the DSOs and get everybody's take.
Oh.
But my thing is, it might not be for you, but it might be for someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Some people love Aspen and some people hate Aspen. But it's, it is what it is. And there are people that really like it and love that organization. So I really think it depends on the person.
Yeah.
And maybe not so much the DSO, but what they want to do with their career and the environment they like to work in.
And it's true, like, whatever private practice you work in, private practice is not the same as any other private practice, right?
Right.
Like that culture is going to be completely different. So, even with DSOs, every office is going to be different because you have different people.
Yeah.
So
I think that's so true. I mean, I know just going to different offices within my DSO, there's a different vibe in this office than that office. And so I think that you just have to find your niche.
Yes.
Absolutely. When I'm doing my presentations for hygiene students prior to graduation, part of the presentation discusses as different employment options, right? You could work private, you could go corporate, you could go DSO, you could temp, you could do all these different things. And I tell the students, what's a good fit for you right now might change throughout your career as you grow through life. So, it's like when I started, it was corporate, then I went private, and now I'm in the DSO space, and each one kind of fit each little era of my career really well.
Sure. And that's actually one of my biggest regrets. I actually wish I would have gotten to the DSO space earlier in my career.
Oh, 100%. Me too. I should have done it right after graduation.
Yeah.
I feel like a dummy. I totally missed out on so many cool things that I am really appreciative now. But would I have appreciated them if I didn't experience all of this crap I hated? I don't know.
That's true.
It's almost like that thing, you don't appreciate a good boyfriend you don't appreciate a good boyfriend unless you've had a bad one, right?
Right. Or the grass, the grass is always greener.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody thinks that. They're like, oh no, I want to do this. And they're like,
yeah.
Okay.
So are you focusing on hygienists within the podcast as guests? You mentioned that you had your doctor on.
Yeah.
But are you kind of focusing on hygienists?
Yeah, I'm focusing on hygienists. I wanted to have him on because I adore him and he's awesome. And so I really wanted to talk though about transitioning, because I think that's something, like I said, I think that's something a lot of people will be going through in the
Yeah.
future. And so I really wanted to see what his experience was as the doctor, as opposed to my experience as the employee.
Yeah. No, I
Well,
think that's a really good one.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
Christine, he's a huge part of your story. This is going to give listeners like an insight to like knowing more about you through your experience with this doctor for
and
decades, right?
he's, yeah, and like I said, he was so fun. We had such a great conversation. I wish we could have talked for hours. Actually, after we ended it, he started talking about more stuff, and I was like, darn it, we should have kept recording.
Oh, I'm sure. So many fun stories. So we talked about misconceptions. And I mean, Joffrey, you kind of said, and even Christine, you both kind of said, oh, I wish we would have gone DSO straight out of school or earlier on in the career.
Yeah.
Why do you say that specifically? You said cool things, but for new grads listening or hygienists listening that are maybe thinking about a DSO, why would you say yes, make the move from a private practice to a DSO?
Oh, I'll let Christine answer it first, and then I'll add on.
Okay. I definitely think that I would be way up in the ranks by now. I think I would have been, I'm competitive, I'm driven. I think I would have like moved up the chain. And so I kind of think I would have liked those opportunities.
Yeah. Okay, Joffrey.
Okay. So many reasons why I wish I was part of a DSO sooner. I just love so many things about the DSO that I'm at right now. The number one, though, is compensation. I love the compensation style that I have right now. It's hourly plus commission. There's no risk to the hygienist. Have a bad day, fall back on your hourly rate. Have an amazing day, you get your hourly, and then a percentage of collections. And I love that.
That's nice.
Never made this much money as a hygienist in my entire career. Now, I have always been a very high producing hygienist. I'm also very competitive and love to see my name at the top of the list and just strive to give the patients the absolute best care. And that's how you get to be, that exceptional hygienist, is when you're truly engaged with your patients, right? It's never been about the numbers. It's been about the care from the get. I just want to make that clear. If anyone's listening thinking I just love numbers, that's not true. I love patients and giving good care. Well, but it's the perks that come with it. Benefits, the bonus checks, the 401k, the paid time off, the paid holidays. It's the sign-on bonus. It's the tuition reimbursement for new grads. It's relocation allowance. Like, I feel like I missed out on so many things not being part of a cool group like this. And I tell the students all the time, you guys are providers and you deserve all of these things. It's crazy to think you have like this degree and you're a provider, yet you have no vacation.
Yeah.
And so it just makes it feel like more legit a career. Like, it makes me feel more important in a way.
Like you have a grown-up job.
Right. Well, I've been lucky to always be appreciated, but and that's, I still feel appreciated. So appreciation, I think, is a big thing for sure.
I would agree. So let's talk about kind of the flip side as a hygienist working for a DSO. Christine, what do you think can be some of the challenges that uniquely are faced by hygienists working for DSOs?
I'm thinking about that because that question comes up. And I'm really racking my brain on some of the challenges. The one thing that I think is a challenge, and I guess it's however you want to look at it, but my thing is like picking certain supplies. Like,
Mm,
because our supplies are pretty streamlined and we do have a list. So I have options, but a lot of times when you go to trade shows and you see cool stuff that you want to try, and it's a little bit, it's not like you're going to get it unless you purchase it or bring it on board. And then to get it again might be really difficult. So that kind of stuff, there's a lot of new stuff I'd like to try that it's not as easy to do that as if I was in private practice and I'm like, "Oh, can we get that?" And he'd be
yeah.
like, "Yeah, sure."
Not having quite as much of a say on some of the technology that's getting integrated or some of those supplies,
Yeah,
your favorite prophy angles instead
right.
of the crappy cheap ones. Like you want the anti-splatter stuff, please,
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah, I think
thing.
that's one of my biggest challenges, I think, because there's like a dry mouth spray that I really like, but you have to have a prescription, and I don't know, like I wish we could have that in the office. There's a couple other oral rinses that I think are really cool, but they want the dentist to buy it, and
Yes.
so
I feel like that's a passion project for Joffrey right there.
Gosh, yeah, perhaps, but I'm really not picky about supplies. So I
mm,
can see how it's really important to somebody else. But
right.
me, I could do the job with any prophy paste. I might be a little picky on the floss there. I do love a specific floss, but prophy paste, like any of that kind of stuff, like it doesn't matter to me. And I feel so fortunate. I mean, I asked for a laser. We got a laser. We just integrated uh, Bola AI, where it's like reading all my probe depths through
Oh,
the
Oh,
really?
lapel mic.
awesome.
And that is such a huge game changer. I
Yeah.
know that's not where the conversation's supposed to be, but I'm going to tell you about it anyway because I love it
No, I
so,
was
so much.
just gonna segue into
Um,
technology, so this is perfect.
yes. Okay, you guys, I can do an entire perio chart in under 2 minutes.
Wow.
And I just say the number. I just probe and say it out loud, and it all just goes right onto the perio chart.
Do you have to like activate it, or can you just say, "Hey, Boca, start perio chart" or something like that?
I do activate it. So the battery pack is like AA batteries, so it does have like an auto turn off. So I do have to
Mhm.
like turn the little thing on in my pocket when I bring the patient back. So then it's just on and live, ready to go. And then I just tell Bola on the computer like we're starting a new one, and then I click on their perio chart, and then from there I can go. And then when I'm done, I can say Bola, save the perio chart, and it'll just save it for me. Like 2 minutes tops. It is so neat.
That's
That's
nice.
nice that it's clipped on here, because
Yeah.
I've been in offices where I have had the headset.
Mm,
Oh yeah, I feel like a like I'm gonna like
you work
working
at a
at a
call
call center
center,
again,
Right?
from back in back in the day when I was so much younger. But
Right?
I was just gonna say about like technology. I think that is one of the benefits of working for a
Yeah.
DSO is they do integrate a little bit more technology into their offices. I think probably because they get a little bit better of a deal. Because we've had AI now for almost a year and a half, and I love it. We have Overjet in our
Yeah.
operatories. I love it so much. I was a little like skeptical at first, like, oh, they're just gonna try to like hold this over our head somehow, but I love it. Like when our internet goes down and I don't have it, I get very upset and frustrated because I'm like, I use it so much for patient education.
Yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
I love it.
It's the
Love it so much.
future. Yeah,
It
that
is,
you're very lucky. That's definitely the future.
yeah, I enjoy it. I know, and then Joffrey's over here with her hands-free probing.
Yeah.
So
it is a game changer. This might be one of those things I like can't live without.
after this, you're like,
Yeah. I'm
nope.
like, oh my gosh, they've ruined me.
Now now does it have a wire attached to the
It
thing?
does right now, but I just kind of put that in my jacket.
Okay.
So just from here, and the battery pack is actually super light. It's way lighter than my old fashioned loops that I used to wear that had the light on it.
Yeah.
And it was kind of funny because I thought, oh wow, I just spent thousands of dollars to go wireless loops, and now I'm back with a wire. But it's so light and it's so convenient that I'm like, I don't care, it's fine.
Yeah.
And what's it called again?
This is through Bola AI, BOLA. And
Interesting.
I think, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think Bola AI and Overjet may have like a
thing.
maybe yeah.
Oh,
I will inquire within.
Yeah,
Yes, definitely
definitely
look into that.
should.
'Cause it is a huge game changer.
Yeah, I'm gonna do. I want to do a podcast on the AI revolution here because now maybe you can answer this for me. It with Overjet, can they do pro breedings or bone?
No,
Okay,
no. I know that was one of my questions. Well, actually, one of my questions was, do I ever have to probe again? Because it
right,
will not break my heart if I
right,
have to probe again. But it just gives the patients a really good visual of, hey, I tell them it works on a signal light system, like green, yellow, red. Green, good. Yellow, like, okay, we're losing bone here. And then red, obviously, hey, we've got a serious problem. So it gives them a good visual, just like when you do probings and you say the numbers out loud and you let them know
yeah,
what that means, they're listening the whole time because they want to see. But then seeing it on the computer, when I pull up the x-rays, I say, okay, I'm going to put a filter over it so you can see what I see when I'm looking at your x-rays. And then, some people are just super engaged. They like it.
hmm
They're super excited about AI. So it creates a really great conversation. So I've enjoyed it, honestly.
yeah. I think the visual aspect is really amazing.
And if you don't already have a person in mind for that podcast, we actually did a CE for at one of our local
The Southern
components,
component,
the
yeah.
Southern component, and I have her contact information.
Oh, awesome!
But yeah, so she's like the authority and knows everything
Great,
about all the AI. So I have a resource for you if you'd like.
thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah. So you mentioned earlier, you actually gave a really interesting statistic about DSOs. 40% of
Yeah.
dental offices are going to be DSOs by 2026.
Yep.
Wow.
That's the projection. And I think a lot of this is driven, well, obviously COVID drove a lot of, I think, new DSOs, and I think a lot of retirements. A lot of
Yeah.
dentists that are retiring. They just, I mean, it's just such a good deal, cash out, I
Yeah.
mean, and I don't know, like I said, my dentist had 3 different associates that just didn't work out.
Mm.
So it was kind of one of these things where, he was still practicing at 70 and it was like, hey, I might want to quit someday.
Yeah. Retire on your terms.
Right,
Very
exactly. And
simple.
that's basically what he said when I did the podcast with him, is that he was able to stay as long as he wanted. And he didn't have to but he didn't have the responsibilities, which he was so happy at the end, just coming in and doing dentistry, not having to worry about payroll or paying, bills and all that kind of stuff. I just could really see like a weight had been lifted off of him. And he said, even if I had an associate, the minute an associate buys a practice, he kind of wants the old guy out. And so he's like, but this way I could stay. And he stayed for 2 more years.
Wow. That's a great story.
Yeah.
That is like a great heartwarming, like, hey, you want that for them.
Yeah, for sure. He always took
So
very good care of us.
so where do you see like we're obviously talking about the DSO growth. How do you think this is going to kind of impact the future of dental hygiene practice? Do you have any insights?
I don't have any insights, but I have interesting ideas of how it could go.
Okay.
I think obviously a lot of DSOs are dentist driven because dentists own them.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think there are a lot of DSOs that are more business, like business people own them. And I actually wonder if the business people don't see us as more of a value than to our our dentist driven ones. So I think there could be some very interesting expansion for hygiene roles in the future in a DSO.
That's exciting to hear. I like that. Like that
Yeah. I don't
projection.
know if it'll come to fruition.
Well, I mean, here we are talking about roles that probably 10 years ago didn't exist for hygienists or were very, very few and far
Right.
between. So I don't think it's far-fetched. Who knows
Yeah.
what it's going to look like, but yeah.
But I think that's important. And that's another reason why I wanted to do the podcast is I think it's important that we have a seat at the table and that we are able to get our input in about what we want our profession to look like and not kind of get steamrolled.
Yeah.
Kim McCready, she does such a beautiful job describing how, like, this describing the space for DSOs, like how the space was created. And because we're talking about in the future, 40% of offices will be DSOs, right? And what's the pattern used to be the doctor owned the practice, he sold it, and that was his retirement. And then the new guy bought it, and that was now his job, right? Well, now they're graduating with so much debt that they can't afford to buy a practice on top of the education that they have. So the DSO space kind of bridges that together for the retiring doctors and then the new ones coming out or who are ready to join. And they like your doctor got to stay for 2 years. The DSO I work for, they like the doctors to stay for a while as well before transitioning out. And yeah, I just love the way she describes it as like a help. They're there to help that transition between doctors.
Yeah. And I know one of the doctors that worked at our DSO has gone off and started his own practice. And my DSO was extremely supportive of him and because that's what he really wanted to do. And so I think that's awesome that he could do that if he wanted to. One thing Dr. Palmer said, and I thought this was kind of interesting, and I don't know, and this is his opinion, I guess, but he said this one thing, and I was like, oh my God. He said, the new dentists want the lifestyle, but not the responsibility.
I could
And
see
I
that.
was just like, that really struck me because I was like, oh, he goes, yeah, they want the Porsche, but they don't want to have to do payroll and stay late and, all that kind of stuff.
Well, think about it. That's actually really similar with the like newer generation preferring townhomes or condos or stuff where things are taken care of for them, so they don't have to worry about maintenance on anything. So it definitely is like a new like lifestyle shift that's happening. Yeah,
and it's a different mindset. Younger kids nowadays, they don't want to be workhorses. They want to have a good balance of life and and their extra curricular activities and their business. So and I don't think that's a bad thing. We could all use some balance, let's face it.
Yeah, balance. Because definitely, I think previous generations kind of worked themselves, their fingers to the bone, like my grandparents for sure. Not dental related, but, they worked forever until they physically could not. And I don't think they got to enjoy their retirement as much as they could have. And, so that's why I said earlier, getting to retire on your terms, that's the dream.
Yeah.
Not having to work, but not working until you physically can't, but getting to bow out and say, yep, I'm done. I'm done. And I'm good with it.
Right.
So on your DSO, or not on your DSO, I'm sorry, but on your podcast, what are you hoping to achieve advocacy wise for hygienists? Like you said, we want a seat at the table. How do you see the podcast really kind of getting you a seat at the table?
I'm hoping that the C-suite will watch some of these episodes because I actually I'm kind of curious. I think they kind of want to know what I'm doing, like how I'm going to. They're like, oh no, what is she gonna say? So I'm hoping, but a lot of the people I'm going to be talking to, some of them are in the C-suite. So I think it's going to be interesting. I'm really trying, though. I want to recognize more clinical hygienists at that level as well. Like I interviewed Carlos, the traveling hygienist. He worked for a DSO. And basically what he did was he filled in on people's maternity leaves or vacations. And when he wasn't doing that, they would have him go to different offices that maybe were busier than other offices. And he kind of did this whole travel thing. And I just thought that was really fascinating. I mean, he was still clinical, but he was doing a job that is definitely needed in most DSOs. And I don't know. I want to showcase those people as well. But I want other people to talk about what they do in a director position or a C-suite position so that people know that those opportunities are out there as well.
I think it's a really smart idea, Christine. I do.
Thanks.
I love it.
Thank you. I couldn't believe nobody was in this space. I was just like, why is no one talking to these people? Because these people are awesome. And I don't know. I still work clinically, and I don't know. I think that sometimes those people don't get recognized as much as some other people. So I want to have a good mix of people.
Well, I love that. Yeah, you're creating this platform to highlight our like I feel like you are definitely elevating the profession. And that's what Amanda and I are all about, right?
Oh, thank you.
And one thing that I have recently learned that I don't think everybody knows or can make that same comparison is that corporate dentistry and DSOs can be very different.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very different. And then based on my own experience, having practiced in both settings, I can really see why corporate dentistry is like fizzling out and like DSOs are the new kids on the block. Because when I was working in corporate dentistry, everything was very, very standardized. I'm talking like standardized from the way we answer the phone, standardized to the interview questions for new patients, giving new patients a tour of the facility using like the given script, right? That we had to memorize. And then going to DSO, at first I kind of thought they were the same, and they're not. At DSO, you have like so much more autonomy over how you want to practice hygiene.
Yeah.
And that is one of the other things I fell in love with was the autonomy.
And again, I think that just depends a lot on who's running the show.
Mm-hmm.
I never knew that there was a difference. I think, Joffrey, you had brought that up on a previous podcast, I think possibly with Noriana. I don't remember, but you guys were talking about it and I was just like, hold on, what? I didn't realize that I thought those terms were interchangeable, like calculus and tartar, like, aren't they the same thing? So when you said that, I was like kind of taken back. And so you said it again and I'm like, oh, can you give examples of like corporate versus DSO? Obviously you work for DSO. We all work for DSOs, but what's a corporate dental office that still exists?
Oh, I like in Utah, Monarch Dental would be a corporate. I think when all of their businesses have the exact same name, that's a good indicator that that's a corporation. The DSOs tend to keep the traditional name that the selling doctor had. They usually keep that.
Okay.
So the DSO is kind of like just camouflaged as these private practices in the community that patients may not even be aware that they are going to a DSO, right?
Yeah.
But the corporation, it's like they're all called the same thing sometimes.
Okay.
Interesting.
It's like an Aspen. Basically, I feel like you walk into an Aspen Dental, it's going to have like the same branding, badging, color scheme everywhere because they're typically like a brand new office, right? Like they don't go in and buy, so they're not
build all their offices.
Yeah. So that could be, I guess, a difference as well, just based on our conversation is like they build from the ground up. So like you walk into an operatory, everything is in the same place.
Sure.
Right. And, you know, I bet there is some crossover, though. I bet with, especially in the future, there's going to be more crossover where DSOs end up purchasing those corporations.
Mm.
And so then they may end up keeping some of those names. But I mean, so it's hard to distinguish between the two, really.
I think it makes a little bit more sense now to me based on what we just talked about. So, okay.
I'm sure there's really good corporations out there. I just never experienced one.
Yeah.
And again, like I said, I'll have some people on. I know I'm going to have somebody on from Aspen, and they love it. So
yeah. And that's what matters.
Yeah.
Works for you.
Your happiness is what's important.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like another thing about like DSOs or corporations, if you want to put those in there too, is the benefits. I mean, we need healthcare. And when you graduate from hygiene school, a lot of times you're single and you need healthcare. So the benefits are a huge selling point, I think.
Yeah.
You know, another selling point I didn't mention earlier, I think it is that mentorship. You know, my DSO, we have a hygiene council. There's a representative from every single state who plays a huge role in supporting the hygienist in that state. And I value that a lot. I think that is really cool that there are people outside of your own office that have your best interest in mind.
I love that. A hygiene council. That sounds so
official.
Yeah, I love that.
Slight Game of Thrones.
Right? That's yeah. Go talk to the council.
We will bring it before the council.
I love it. I think it is just this great support system for all the practicing hygienists.
Yeah.
All right, Christine, we love to end our podcast with our signature sign-off questions.
Oh, gosh. Okay.
I will ask the first one. What do you wish you would have learned in school that took you years to learn as a dental hygienist?
Probably time management. I'd have to say that would probably be that's the biggest hurdle coming out of school, I think. It's time management.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Second question. What piece of advice do you wish you could go back and give yourself as a new graduate?
Join a DSO.
Perfect.
She's not even a recruiter, and she's just trying to get to go for a DSO.
Totally.
Oh, Christine, it's been such a pleasure having you on the podcast tonight.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you, ladies, so much.
Yes, this was a lot of fun.
And just for anybody listening, where is your podcast put out on? So if they want to find you and listen.
Yeah, it's on Spotify and Apple Podcast, and it's called the DSO Hygienist.
Awesome. All right, guys, go check that out.